Ready to go. All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Justin McAdam. I'm the chair of the Distressed Unit Appeal Board. Thank you all for joining us here at our August 25th, 2022 meeting. Call the meeting to order. As is our custom, we will start with public comment. If you have not yet signed up, please either send a message electronically through the app, or if you sign up in person, we have a sign-up sheet here on a table in the back. Before we jump to that, to give people time to sign up, we will pivot to the approval of our minutes from our July 28th, 2022 public meeting. Those were circulated in advance. Are there any comments or changes that need to be made to those minutes? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So
Second?
Second.
All right, it has been motioned and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, motion carries. The minutes are adopted. Now, we will now move to public comment. Let's start with Ms. Lavetta Tyndall, who is here with us in person today. Ms. Tyndall, if you're ready. And just as a reminder, I didn't say this at the beginning, of course, our policy is that we allow individuals 3 minutes to speak. We will provide you a warning when you're close to that. If you want, you can step to the podium to speak. Ms.
we don't have the Pledge of Allegiance today?
What's that?
We don't have the Pledge of Allegiance today?
I've not traditionally started our meetings then.
I thought you did. Thank you so much. Where's the vehicle for the instrument for the top? There it is. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Mrs. Lavetta Tyndall, taxpaying property owner, one of many of the great city of Gary, Indiana. 1966 graduate of the historically renowned institution of educational excellence and architecturally profound world-renowned Gary Theodore Roosevelt High School with noted graduates Dick Barnett, Willie Williams, Avery Brooks, Deborah McCullough, Larry Webb, and many others. And it is hoped that the hope is, and we think that it should be, Roosevelt should be used as a model for Gary's community school corporation excellence and equitable education for all students. My question, among many, to start it off, when will our 2022 Westside Leadership Academy graduates receive their yearbooks? Why? Was what is considered or used to be considered once upon a time, I think is still currently considered among other schools, a part of the graduating special activities. Why was it denied our students? The selection and purchasing of new furniture for all schools in Gary is viewed by the citizens as being a distraction put on by the Gary Community School Corporation, when the focus should be, instead of frills and unnecessary actions and extras, rather than the basics, such as the necessities of excelling in reading, writing, arithmetic, science, arts, and critical thinking, should take first place in our priorities, in the priorities of this system and the Gary Community School Corporation administration. The DUAB meeting about Gary, Indiana should be held in Gary, Indiana. Detailed, in-depth answers should be ascertained as to such questions as why does it take over 6 months to replace a roof at Westside Leadership Academy? Why is it that the exclusion of Gary Community School Corporation parents in calling all students in schools the same name? Why is it that the DUAB allows the current manager of the school system to conduct business in a Lone Ranger fashion? You have stated.
Just finish your thoughts.
Thank you. You have stated that this year's focus is going to be educating our children rather than finances. Questions, where are the coaches? That is, the coaches for the number of grade levels. And how many grade levels are there? Where are the coaches for the number of schools? How many schools are there? In the 90-minute block of time that has been designated for reading, how many human resources have been recruited or are being recruited for 30 students, for instance? What additional aids are needed if there are 5 reading levels in one class, as an example? How many aides are in each classroom? How many minutes per each class, per each subject matter are being allotted? How is the need for physical exercise being met in our schools? If a 90-minute reading block is the existing improvement, how many minutes are being devoted to other subjects? What's the status of the bus service? What's the number of hours that our students are going to be standing in the cold and in the dark this year? A special needs student was left in his classroom during the first week of school.
Ms. Tyndall, if you could
Sleeping,
wrap it up.
thank you. Sleeping, and he missed his bus. Question, where was the aide? What's the ratio of aides to students? You have numbers and percentages and important, yet you don't, an important implementation of different things, but you don't seem to be meeting the standards of excellence. And that is what we are requesting for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tyndall.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Mr. Dwight Gardner joining us by telephone.
As the social justice chair of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Gary and vicinity. I'm a Gary graduate of Emerson High School, and all of my children are graduates of the Gary Community School Corporation. Just called today, first of all, to thank the Gary Community School Corporation for partnering with the Baptist Ministers Conference of Gary and vicinity in our Peace Summer initiative. It included a poster campaign that the Gary Community School Corporation supported and even adopted some of our posters for posting in school buildings. Also, we had a back to school rally that was supported by the Gary Community School Corporation, and one of our presenters was Attorney General Clifford Johnson from the Northern District of Indiana. Attorney General Clifford Johnson, who is very interested in continuing to work with us. On the Friday before the school opened, I had the opportunity in delivering posters to visit every single school in our district, and was pleasantly, I won't say surprised, but was met with pleasantry as it relates to the cleanliness of the buildings and the preparation for receiving the students. Things looked really, really well. And then finally, there is the opening of the Westside High School football and track stadium, which will occur tomorrow, which is huge in our community. All of these things are actually designed to establish a quality of climate and culture in our buildings that will support the learning process. And in that regard, I think that Gary Community School Corporation and its leadership has done a great job this summer in putting those things in place. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Up next, we have Ms. Tracy Coleman joining us by phone. Give us one moment to unmute you. All right, Ms. Coleman, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Coleman. My son graduated valedictorian of Westside Leadership Academy and he was also elected the senior class president. And I'm here to ask DUAB to please make sure the class of 2022 get their yearbook. As a parent, after your child graduates, you have to do the wrap up to pick up the diploma and a final transcript. So it was automatic for me to just assume that the children would be given a yearbook. And when I just inquired about when is the date I could pick up the yearbook, I was told that one is not going to be published. And this has caused great concern because at a minimum, our children deserve a yearbook to memorialize what they experienced and those joyous occasions. And so I've been before DUAB where I've had to ask for a chemistry book to not feed the children bread for breakfast and let the children go to Great America. And now I'm here asking that DUAB uses position to make sure that McNulty and the West Side administrators provide the students a yearbook for the class of 2022. Also, with 1065, I know there's going to be celebration of the track and the football field, but I just have to remind DUAB and also MGT, you always had the power to forgive the debt of the Gary Community School Corporation, but that was never asked on the behalf of the children of the Gary Community School Corporation. And instead, parents and concerned citizens went to the Indiana General Assembly where we appealed for the passage of legislation to allow our community to be able to use those debt payments to help our children. And once again, if DUAB celebrates it, please remember you have the power to forgive it. And I just checked the debt of the United States of America. It's over $30 trillion at this point. But no one in this country would say get rid of the Senate or get rid of the House because our country is in debt. And so with the Gary community, I would ask that DUAB look at the money because now we're at a window of opportunity where we can build a field house for our children, that we can give them wraparound services. And the fact that even though there's an abundance of money, we're now facing an academic passage rate of 2%. It's problematic. And DUAB should be concerned that we don't have exact numbers. Even dealing with the graduation rate, I look at the class of 2022, it started off at 362 students. And when the class was given a shirt to represent everybody who graduated, there were only 143 names on it. So DUAB, to hold people accountable, it's important that we have accurate numbers. And with the academics, and I would just ask that I be allowed to say this briefly. I understand that $8 million was spent on furniture, but when you have children who can't pass reading exams or math exams, after a while you have to determine where your priorities are. And our priority are with the children. And I don't see any program saying that we have to get an alternative school in Gary. Because when my son did start West Side, they had an alternative program which was ran after school. So those children who had difficulty adjusting in a regular school day, they were not disenfranchised, but they had support after school. So I'm imploring DUAB, because in the end, when these are our children, we don't win when our children don't get books. I don't win as a parent when I have a son who wants to be a doctor and he can't get a chemistry book. So there's a sense of urgency, and I would just ask, and I would close. In the end, DUAB, our children are suffering. You have authority. You have the ability to even bring in the Indiana Department of Education to recognize that there's an academic crisis that after all these years, DUAB has not been able to solve. And lastly, when Edison Learning, and we looked at the scores at Roosevelt, and some of those scores crashed to zero, we as parents went before the Indiana Department of Education and said, enough is enough. You have to stop letting these people experiment with our children's education and go back to the basis of home rule and those things in our country that we believe people locally have enough love and compassion and knowledge for their community to solve these problems. Once again, DUAB, thank you for this time. Please know, Gary, we love our children. This academic crisis is tearing us apart, And MGT needs to go, and we need our children to be local control, freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. We appreciate it. Up next, we have Mr. Chuck Hughes joining us by phone. Mr. Hughes, give us a moment to unmute you. All right, Mr. Hughes, you are unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. First, let me say this. I am speaking, I'm the president and CEO of the Gary Chamber of Commerce, but I am speaking as an individual, and I certainly respect all of the comments that I've heard to this point. I understand the passion of parents and people who care about the community. But let me say this. I think that when we start talking about responsibility, I think the responsibility lies with all of us. And I'm not just a person who just suggests what others should do. I mean, I was there for the first day of school, greeting students. I do an annual event called the Lakeshore Classic. I actually supported Westside High School students in the past by purchasing buses and transportation to go to events, those kinds of things. What I would like to see happen is, and I'm not getting into minutia of who should be running, who should not be running the system, or whatever the case might be. What concerns me most is the kind of fervor that I hear from the community. I only hear it at meetings such as this. I want to see some of our residents there supporting the young people. Come out to the sporting events. Come out to the other activities that the school provides. If we start talking about creating a learning environment, it's holistic, it's comprehensive. It's more than just expressing our concerns in a meeting that the students are not even privy to. We need to show them as a community. And then let me say this as well. I'm not here to be an apologist for anybody or to allow for anybody or whatever, but I know from a leadership position, it's virtually impossible to do almost anything without the support of the entire community. So I think that aside from us laying blame anywhere, I think the responsibility is all of us. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not necessarily the data and the facts and all of that stuff, but it is, I think, integral to having a very viable, successful school system that the children will be able to witness and see that the families, the parents, the community, the stakeholders, everybody is there. Let's just not wait until we get an opportunity to express our displeasure one way or the other in a meeting. Let's show by example that we are a community. And then after that, if the results are not what we want them to be, then we let the chips fall where they may. But I'm only calling because I'm sending out the clarion call to my community. Let's start today. In fact, Westside has a football game tomorrow. Let's pack the stands. Let's come out there. Let's cheer these kids on. And I'm a person who's a former athlete myself in the Gary Public School System, and I know the kind of inspiration that I derive from having the community behind every effort we made. It certainly translated into the classroom as well. So again, the legal issues, the other concerns, which are all valid, and people have a right to express them, I respect it. But by the same token, I am one that believes that community inclusion on everybody's part is essential to what we want to see happen eventually with our students. So again, I want to just thank you for the opportunity. I know that what I suggest is always a plea of passion and interest and involvement, but I think that is what we need, and then we can determine later on what the outcome was. But I think the responsibility does not rest with any one individual or any one group. I think we all have to assume the mantle of responsibility, and then let's see what the results are. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Up next, we have Ms. Nina Burton joining us by phone.
Good afternoon. This is Nina Burton. I am a current parent of 3 students in the Gary Community School Corporation. I have 2 students that graduated from Westside Leadership Academy, one in 2020, who now attends Kentucky State, and one in 22, who now attends Kankakee Community College. I am also an alumni and lifelong Gary resident. I am in agreement with my colleague, Mr. Chuck Hughes, in all that he said, but I also wanted to add that I am happy to see the progress that is being made in the school system. And then not just the facilities itself, but even the coming together of the parents, the coming together of the community to help support and ensure that our scholars know that we are 100% behind them. I would just like to see definitely more emphasis on the curriculum and the education of our students. I know that there has been some work done in that area. I do know that new curriculum has been purchased. I know new curriculum has been installed into our system. So I'm hoping that those things do continue, because we're not just here to celebrate sports and athletics, but we're here to support and encourage our kids in every area and every facet of their lives. No one is perfect. There is not a 100% solution to anything, but as Mr. Hughes has said, when we work together, we come together as partners, as parents, as the community, we can accomplish a whole lot. And I'm hoping and praying that even with looking at local control, I met with individuals from Newark, New Jersey, who were under state control for over 20 years. We don't want to see that in Gary, but we do want to see the transition of power made where it can be sustained. It has been much better within the past few years. That has come with some issues. It has come with some concerns, but I cannot say that those issues and concerns were not there before the state and MGT took control. As Mr. Hughes said, we have to take some accountability ourselves and be willing to work through every issue and every problem, because the most important thing right now are our children and their education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Up next, we have Mr. Darnell Gaffney. Mr. Gaffney, give us one moment to unmute you. All right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Hi. Yes. Hi. My name is Darnell Gaffney. I am the owner of Space Age Marketing. I am just calling to basically say my great experience that I just had with the Gary school system. I am a vendor, and it's very important to have great client-vendor relationships. Mr. Chuck Hughes just spoke on the fact that there'll be a football game on Friday, which is tomorrow. And it's very important that the client-vendor relationships are very strong in order for that to be a successful event. And the school system just ordered some supplies with me. It was very professional. I must admit, I was hesitant at first because of previous things that I had heard years ago, but I want to say that not only was it professional from the beginning, it was professional from when I received the initial order. It was professional when I received my payment. My payment was prompt, and it was also very professional when I dropped it off. And I definitely enjoyed the experience being from a product of the Gary school system. So I just want to say that things that are going on behind the scenes that people may not be aware of or they may not see, I want to say that my client-vendor relationship was certainly one of the best, and I'm looking forward to doing much more business with the Gary school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. All right, that concludes the list of individuals we have signed up for today. With that, we'll move to our next item of business. We have the update from the Gary Community School Corporation. Dr. McNulty?
Okay, come on there.
Are you sure?
I think so. You can do this, that's okay. Is that all right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, well, I want to start off by saying that we've had a fabulous start to the school year. We have air conditioning in the school buildings running and happy kids in all the classrooms. We are enrollment is looking good. We have done, I think, a fabulous job of filling the positions. I'm sure as you've been reading across the nation, there's a teaching staffing shortage everywhere. Our HR department and our principals have done a tremendous job going to job fairs all over the place over the summer. We're down to 4 open positions within the district. We have substitute teachers, long-term subs in those 4 positions, and continuing to work on filling those. We have recently entered into a partnership with Purdue. You've heard me talk a lot about our partnership with IUN, in which we've been able to get through probably about 45 teachers in that cohort. So Purdue has now come to the table, and they are interested in starting a cohort with us as well in different strands that IUN perhaps has not been able to fill. So Purdue now has entered into an MOU, and we have 16 people that have signed up for that, and they'll start September 1st. So we're hoping with that new cohort, which is about a 16-month strand, that we'll be able to get those positions filled as well and continue to grow our own within our system. So we're excited with the opening of the school. It's been a great success. We appreciate all the teachers, administrators, and parents. As you heard on the call, we had pastors that came and helped us greet kids and get kids into school the very first day, helped us put badges in. My whole team, we all had schools that we were assigned to. The chamber was there. We had just lots of volunteers coming and helping us get the bus tags on and the crying kindergartners into school the first day. So it was a good success. I want to thank everybody for that. I'm not going to belabor the football thing, but I do want to just tell you that it is a big, big, big deal in Gary about the opening day of our football field tomorrow. And I just want to tell you just a little historical story, and for those of you who are familiar with our football field, it was 2 years ago when we were getting ready to host our first football game for the season, and our athletic director, I went out to see him on the field, and he was virtually hand striping the football field with spray paint and a bucket, and was filling in the holes with sand and dirt on the football field because kids were going to sprain their ankle because the field was in bad repair. We had people mowing the lawn with hand lawnmowers, getting ready for the game that Friday night. And we sat down and talked about, you know, what do we need to do to make sure that our kids have a great field like all of our neighboring school districts. And so you fast forward now with the help of you guys and everybody on our team, it has been a labor of love that we are here. They finished it yesterday. I was sweating it, but they got it done yesterday. It's been painted. We've got lights, we've got fiber, we've got a POS system out there so we can sell shirts and popcorn and so forth. There's the field. The boys got to practice on it for the first time, Tuesday, I guess it was. So it's very, very exciting. So I want to thank you for all your support and being patient with us with all of our requests for the football field. But it is a big, big deal for our community. We are expecting thousands of people Friday night. And we're hoping, I was telling Rebecca earlier, that we're hoping to do many things on the football field besides just football and track, like having movie night on the field where students can come and have a safe place to watch movies and have popcorn and things like that, and sponsor lots of things for Special Olympics and so forth. So thank you again, and we'll send you pictures, and please watch on Facebook if you have time, because it's a big deal. So thank you for that. Our enrollment's looking good. We are a little bit up, as I mentioned. I'm not going to promise anything right now, but we're optimistic. The count day is September 16th, and we'll keep you posted. We're resolving conflicts at this point, as all schools are, for students who are dually enrolled, who may have moved. But at this point, we're optimistic that we're going to be up with our enrollment. So fingers crossed with that. As you heard, we have united our school district to be a Cougar Nation. Again, this is not to forget about the history of the other school districts in the district, and we're going to continue to honor them, and we're going to do that actually tomorrow night on the field. But we really felt that it was necessary and important for our little youngsters to have an identity. So as you're playing other districts, and you know that if you're playing Crown Point, that they're the so-and-so. If you're playing Belleville, they're the Buffalo Vikings, and from little all the way up. So we got baby Cougars now, and we got middle school Cougars. We have high school Cougars, so that they have something to look forward to, and the community can unite around one mascot. We have one of our juniors at the high school who's going to be our mascot for Friday night. We have a new Cougar mascot. It's going to be dancing across the field. Our band is going to be coming across. We've got the band and the band uniforms. So all of the things are coming together that everybody's been anxious to see happen. Our graduation rate right now is looking like it's 79%. It has not been certified by the State Department yet. So I want to say that again, has not been certified by the State Department yet. But at this point, it's 79%. So we're very excited about that, and are celebrating again the hard work of our teachers and administrators, parents, and students. We are going to be hosting several parents and community in-services here over the next several weeks. We're going to be doing one on STEM for the community and our parents, and we're hoping that we'll have a large turnout for that. We're going to be hosting monthly special education in-services for our families on different topics so that they can come and learn how to understand parental rights, for example, for your IEP, knowing how to be an advocate, knowing what other services are available for your student after they graduate, et cetera. So we're going to be hosting monthly in-services on special ed and also for title. So those are all posted, and we'll be sending those out to our families through our face liaisons, mailings, robocalls, et cetera. We're in the middle of budget season, so we'll be bringing our yearly budget. We'll be hosting a meeting in Gary for that, a public meeting, as well as bringing it here in the near future. And we're beginning teacher negotiations that comes around every year. So we're starting that here in the next 2 weeks as well, and we're anxious to have a productive conversations with the union as we move forward. We've recently had a ceremony at our Career Center for those students who are students earlier that never got their high school diploma and have now decided that they would like to get their high school diplomas. We have partnered with the adult ed program. We had 15 students who graduated last week, as well as 10 of their parents. So we had 10 parents also walk by and get their graduation with us. So that was a big deal. We want to continue those efforts so that we can grow that program. And I talked about we're almost fully staffed in the Purdue cohort, and I'll continue on with the para contract when it comes on the agenda. But if there's any questions at this time, I'd love to answer them.
Questions for Dr. Milton? Representative Smith?
Yes.
Yeah, before I ask any questions, first of all, I want to compliment you on the work that you've done at Westside as far as the field is concerned. I wish I could be with you Friday tomorrow night. However, my god sister is having a big birthday party at Market Bar Pavilion, and I'm a host, so I won't be able to be there.
Okay.
But I really would like to be there.
Come to the next one.
I will.
Yeah.
And the second thing, I want to commend you, because this is the first year that MGT has been in charge of the Gary schools with the opening of schools that I didn't take place. I didn't know one thing.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the management is concerned, but I guess please, academics, as you know, that's another story. But I just want to compliment you on those two. But I do have a question. Why wasn't a yearbook? And yearbooks have been a tradition in Gary. The school I graduated from, Grayville, had low student graduation back when schools were having 600 or 700. So we didn't have a yearbook every year. We had a yearbook every 2, but it celebrated the 2 years. Why wasn't a yearbook done this year? And is this, with all the phone calls, all the complaints about that, all the talk on the radio station, why is this the first year that they haven't had a yearbook? And if so, why was the decision made not to have?
Yeah, there was no decision made as far as I know, so I'm hearing about it just like you are, so I'm gonna ask when I go back to the principals. Go ahead. Okay, sorry.
I know in March we did sign a contract with the yearbook company like we always do. I know there was a yearbook club and they were working diligently on the yearbook, and the order was placed, I believe, at the end of April. So I think it may be like a supply issue or a printing issue, but we'll absolutely follow up on that they weren't ready by the time that the kids graduated in May to receive them in hand, but they should be coming in a little bit. I know that they were done with production. So
Yeah, I remember I had 2 yearbooks in high school because we didn't have to be. I remember one of them being back after graduation. Have you tried communicating with the community, explaining it, because it keeps coming up on the talk show, you.
yeah, we'll work with the high school administration to reach out and see where they are with that, and then we'll make sure. We
Well, I think maybe just the president might have.
Yeah, I'm sure Chelsea gets it out.
And then my next question is, what is the raw number of students who passed I Learn, I Ready, and I guess it's like plus it was administrative in the middle schools. The percentages are given, and I understand there's one case 2 out of 100, and another case 3.5 out of 100, and another one 7 point something out of 100. But
I think we're gonna put that in our academic portion of the agenda.
okay, you got wrong numbers in there.
I think they have all the yes. So they've got a
I've asked them before,
okay.
and I'm like, all right, but,
Dr. Milby, buses have been an issue. I'm glad to hear that school is off to a good start and didn't hear anything. We likewise didn't hear anything. That's no news is good news. On the busing front, obviously, that was a challenge last year outside of your control. We had a busing company who wasn't able to supply as many drivers as we needed. What's the situation like this year? How are you handling that? What's it look like coming from?
Yeah, so similar to last year, we started fully staffed with busing. And then as soon as the surrounding districts started school, some of those bus drivers left to fill those routes at other schools. That has happened again this year, not to the same degree as it did last year, but we are down routes again. So again, we have pastors that are helping us. We have vans. We have another vendor out of Highland that we're working with that's going to be helping us with some smaller buses to get those students to school. And we have an old bus that we resurrected and had a mechanic work on it over the summer, and it will be put into our fleet next week we have hired bus driver to drive for ourselves. Illinois Central has also agreed to allow us to hire our own bus drivers if we can find them to drive their buses and work out the liability with our lawyers. Unfortunately, they have once again breached the contract as far as filling those routes, and we're working with Illinois Central on that. I do know that's a nationwide issue. However, we feel like we have worked diligently with Illinois Central to give them plenty of time to get our bus routes filled, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's surprising to hear because that was one of the things that I was getting a ton of phone calls on last year, and she said she still had a problem with it. Maybe they don't,
Well, it's not to the same degree as it was
not the
last year.
same.
Yeah.
I didn't get any call.
Yeah.
Or that's because they've gone from a two-tier system to a three-tier system, so there's fewer drivers needed. There's still a gap that for the reason you may have got through.
So the issue is not the number of buses, it's bus drivers.
Correct. Yes, Illinois Central asked us to go to a three-tier system to help with that and also to lengthen the space between, stagger the school hours more, and we did that, and we're still having some difficulties.
If I understand it correctly, it's that the union agreement that Illinois Central has with its bus drivers doesn't allow Illinois Central to dictate which routes those drivers drive. And so
Correct.
that really hamstrings their ability to supply drivers, but it also hamstrings our ability to ask for those drivers.
That's correct. So they bid on those routes. And so, again, originally, since we started school earlier than some of our neighboring districts, those routes were filled. And then as soon as some of our neighboring districts started, those drivers
They were driving.
to other cities, yeah.
I just want to share with you, I just became privy of this information, I wasn't aware of it prior to this week, that Chicago, with their busing problems, came up with a plan where they're giving a stipend to parents, that a refund or something back to parents who bring their own children into pregnant.
Yep, and we're doing the same,
You are?
yes.
And they're also giving more of a stipend to a parent that will bring multiple children, neighborhood children.
Oh, we haven't done that, but we are paying parents if we can't provide, bus service to them, we are offering them the mileage to drive their students to and from school.
And what is that?
What's that? Oh, gas card, yeah.
How can we make sure that they're using gas cards for transportation to school and not to go get groceries and go on trips?
Specific to gas, so it's an actual.
So it's based on the miles that they have to travel from their home to the school.
Yeah, yeah.
Times, number of school days.
They have to fill out forms as well to sign for them, show that they are not being any route. Verify that. Did not done that. It's a whole paperwork process.
Are there other questions for Dr. Milby regarding general updates? All right. With that, I'm going to skip the next item and move to the academic update. We'll come back to the school improvement fund. So we have a number of individuals here to speak to that.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for this time. I'm Chief Judge,
I'm Kim Bradley.
the academic team. Excited to share some updates with you on progress, including something exciting that's kicked off the school year. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about, we've talked with this group a lot about our academic implementation plan for the year, the detailed plan that's driving your set of activities. So we'll lay out some details there, as well as how we're thinking about goals.
So some of our goals for today and some of the things that have occurred already are that our teachers and leaders were trained on curriculum in the first couple of days of school and key instructional strategies. Data has been released, the data that you all have, to our teachers and school administrators and coaches. And we are targeting those students who were below proficiency and identifying exactly who those students are. So the numbers, the raw numbers translate to actual students, of course, and those children have been identified in those meetings that they've had in the last 2 weeks. Our collaboration systems have launched, so this is not new for the PLCs, but we have a clearer focus. There is a PLC implementation rubric that we're using with our schools as well, so that everybody understands to the degree to which those meetings occur. And then structures are in place to support the high expectations around school culture that we have. And those, along with others, will be our Q1 focus for us. And so, turn it over to you.
Great. So next slide here, just to orient folks a little bit, and we talked about this in the last board meeting. As we think about academic goals and a clear plan for how we're going to support students in 22-23 and then through 23-24, we start with this idea of long-term goals, which, you know, in broad terms, we've talked about are kids academically prepared, civically engaged, and really ready for the next step in their journey in the system and then beyond K-12. And so that specific set of long-term goals then leads to much more specific goals and objectives, as well as strategies that we've developed in our 22-23 school year plan. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that. And then we've broken them that out then further to a set of Q1 sets of activities, what's happening in the first 6 weeks of school, and what are the progress measures we can look at to understand whether we're making progress against that overall plan. And so I'll talk quickly on the next slide about how we think about the connection of those specific goals and welcome thoughts from folks. Specifically, as I mentioned, obviously our broader aspiration, and this group has talked about this, I think, really eloquently. We're working on 2 levels. We've got a proficiency goal, particularly where we're trying to close the gap with the state. And then we're also aiming to make progress. We have to make progress with all our students in every classroom, every day, and across that school year. As we think about that more tactically, that's ensuring that we're making a year's worth of progress with every student in the system every school year. So more specifically then on that progress topic, we've really started to focus, and Kim was just mentioning this as it relates to the actual students that we've identified, ensuring particularly our students that are farthest behind are moving from that below proficiency to what we're calling in striking distance, which may be the approaching category, but we're trying to make as much progress with those students particularly so that they have a path as well. And clearly, we want to continue to make progress toward the proficiency bar overall, so that progress construct for us gets down to the tactics around moving kids at least a year in their growth over the course of the 22-23 school year. And then, you know, we talk a lot in education conversations about what I would call lagging indicators, which state tests, summative assessments are really the lagging indicators. And so we've really tried to break this down. Sorry for a little bit of the eye chart here. We've really tried to break this down through the continuum, the journey that students in our care have K-12. And so you see across the top here, what are the sets of learning opportunities and strategies that we're putting forward for students at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and this is illustrative. And then how we're thinking about the outcomes, the set of leading and then ultimately lagging indicators being things like state assessments, graduation rate, et cetera. But we have a lot of progress indicators along the way. So I won't read through this specifically, but particularly as we're moving through the elementary school years, we talked a lot about proficiency at third grade on reading. We've talked about students being ready for that next step as it relates to middle school. We talked last time about this idea that kids are learning to read and then they're reading to learn. So that transition as it happens in middle school, ensuring that kids in middle school then are ready for high school and those pathways, and then ensuring that those kids are truly ready and have multiple pathways at the high school level, really speaks to that continuum. So again, trying to be much more detailed and nuanced around our overall plan, again, with this idea of leading and lagging indicators. And so as we continue our work in 22-23, we are focused on that first Q1 set of activities. We're deep in that work right now, doing additional diagnostic assessments, really ensuring we understand where kids are so that we can support them on this journey and beyond. Thoughts, additions? Welcome thoughts from Kimberly. Welcome thoughts from the group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully, you don't only have 2 years more to deal with Gary. Okay, hopefully. Normally, what occurs is that schools and districts begin to plan in January through June and have a plan in place to kick off the next school year. You're starting behind time on this. I don't know when you brought on, but normally you would have a plan that would have specific goals, not the general goal, target goal, and you would have objectives, and you would have strategies, specific strategies, not these key strategies. Key strategies are good, but specific strategies to meet. Your strategies help you to achieve your objectives, and your objectives help you achieve your goals. When do you think that you may have that plan in to implement for this academic year?
Yeah, we actually have the plan. Representative Smith, I was just giving you the overall, and this planning started late in the spring and in the summer. That plan is in place. And as you know, this is a continuous process. This is a living plan.
Is the stakeholders aware of what the plan is? The students, the teachers, the parents?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I've been asking for a plan, school improvement plan for months, and I still haven't seen one.
So happy to share this in more detail with you, exactly as we're talking about. This is the core plan that takes all of the different work that we were talking about.
And last time we had a conversation this week, talking about assessing. So how you got a plan already if you're still assessing? I know you said the working plan going on, but have teachers been shared with the plan for the district as well as a plan for schools?
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've raised that question several times now.
And just one point on the diagnostic. The diagnostic is one part of the overall plan. So in terms of building that diagnostic, in terms of where kids are, that's one milestone on the plan. So it's not that kicks off the planning process, but we have a set of activities, goals, objectives, and strategy.
But it should be ongoing.
Right.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I have not been privy, and I've asked you several times to see a plan, and what I've seen is a lot of paperwork, but not a plan.
And Dr. Smith, the conversation that we've had, at least internally around timing for that is that we asked the team to introduce sort of a high level overview of their trajectory now, recognizing that's already in process. And then at the September meeting that they would take us on a deep dive tour of that plan and give us a more robust overview of that. So trying to piece this out as we go to deal with it in manageable chunks.
And I don't know if I'm going to answer this question, but the state used to require school improvement plans. Are they in place?
Yes.
And how they correlated with the district seems, given the fact that this seems to be a district problem, not just a school problem.
So the school improvement plans are in alignment, I'm sorry, with the district plans because yes.
Yeah.
And the schools are aware of what is in the district plan and making certain that their individual plans and goals and objectives are in alignment with those. Everything that we've done are in alignment with those areas that have been seen as needs for the district, all the way down to the school.
Well, we had our Zoom meeting, Dr. Nelson said that she would get.
Absolutely.
Together, so hopefully, you'll have that information and satisfy some of my curiosity.
And looking forward to that, I would just say as well, one of the things we want to do, Representative Smith, as you described, there are many different plans that exist in education systems generally. So one of the goals of the academic implementation plan is to create one coherent, integrated view of all of that. So as Kim's describing, there's a school improvement plan, there's a district improvement plan, there's a variety of different compliance and other related documents. Our goal with the academic implementation plan is to have one coherent view. And to this point, we want to stay at the goal, objective, strategy level, and then layer in the specific sets of activities. So that's what this plan does.
Great.
Yeah. And with Andre.
Okay, all right. So, and you heard specifically some of the language around the areas of focus, and as we get ready to walk through this year with you along, we're going to be leaning into the 4 big buckets. We're going to be talking specifically about curriculum instruction, collaborative structures, our assessment strategy, and the data system and structure. So specifically, as we get to Q1, you can go to the next slide. And I mentioned this before, that it's really critical for us to look at how we come out of the starting gate, right? And when you come out of the starting gate, that's when you, from your assessment, see where kids are, exactly where they are at this particular point in time, and make adjustments at that particular point. You begin to establish, here's your baseline, and then what course corrections does the system need to make first? And when you determine what systems, course corrections have to occur, then you go down to the school level. And from the school level, you say, okay, well, this particular school may need some support based on the data that comes out of Q1. And then from the school level, the principals then look at the individual classrooms to determine what it is that they may need to adjust in their own internal activities based on that data. The collaborative structures are the things that will occur with the walkthroughs. And Ms. Bradley had talked about the walkthroughs and the walkthrough rubric that the schools are actually using. Also determining that we have effective PLCs, that folks aren't meeting just to meet, but they have a purpose and goal for them. And then also our Q1 data systems and structures from a behavioral perspective. Are we getting the results from a positive climate and culture that's happening through the system? And then also from that perspective, our students in school, right? And so what you have to be able to do when you get to the end of Q1, you look backwards. If any of these areas jump off the page as problematic, then you know we've got the course correct. We can't take off and start doing something new. Then the system responds based on that particular set of data to say, let's pause so we can make sure that we're moving this thing in the right direction. One of the reasons we want to talk with you all, the importance of all of us having this data focus on this pace, because if you try to do it too early, your data might hold you back. So at that point, all you're doing is guessing. We want to make sure that we have all of our data in, bring that to you, so as we've analyzed it, you can give thoughts and understandings to what we are seeing, as well as how Ms. Bradley and her team are adjusting to the very things that have happened through that first quarter.
Sure. I found that last one, school learning, 2 months that occurred in August and September. And now you got for 27, students should have been learning, addressing these weaknesses for 2 whole months.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute. So there is an ongoing formative process that students and teachers work together. So, you know, that can be exit tickets, formative assessments, quizzes, and the like, right? And so those are results that the teachers have and they can course correct based on what happened in the classroom on a particular day. But when you get to quarter one, there has to be a check that says, based on everything that has been taught, not just week one, but the 6 weeks. I talked about the outward and the inward facing mirror. When you give these formative quick checks, those are outward facing, right? I did this, here you go, tell me what happened. But when you get to Q1 and you go backwards for 6 weeks and you have your interim assessment, that's inward facing. That means that the kids are telling you, for the past 6 weeks, I got it. Here's the data that shows it. I can move forward. Or from that 6 weeks, you really didn't get it. And here are the areas that really are problematic. And how do you adjust based upon that and then move forward? So it's a continual process.
And on this particular indicator, we are envisioning Q1, all the data, attendance data. So the timeline is just a collection timeline here. It's not that we're ignoring August and September.
And what happens is that if we have September and August, and we're able to point that there's some specific weeks that we've had some difficulty, right? That we need to make sure that we're addressing.
So what you're doing is making sure that students are attending. Is that what that says? It's not directly correlated to learning, but it's attendance. That's attendance.
Oh, no. See, that's where people make a mistake.
Well, but
It could be.
the students achieve an average of 85% of students setting up about academics.
No, it says so students are in school and learning. So when you pull, I mean, they didn't add a bullet point to say that on the far right, we're gonna have a direct correlation. But when you pull all that data together and we have 70% average daily attendance and students are 4 and 5 grade levels still behind them, I mean, there's some correlation there. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time to go look at the students who haven't been coming. They probably aren't learning. So you have to be able to pull all of that together and give your Q1 analysis. And then it points you into some things that you may need to do differently. That's at the district level, but at the local level, they're looking at it every single day.
And so I think as we talked about it, it was, you'll have an initial diagnostic assessment. That's the role that I-Ready serves here at the beginning of the school year. And then you'll have an interim assessment then 6 weeks later at the end of the quarter where we'll be looking back on what we learned. And we'll do that then, we'll repeat that cycle throughout the year and be able to check that. And I think as we've talked about it, you envision being able to share those results with us at an aggregate level. To keep us informed along the way about, at high level, what you were seeing on the ground.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I was just going to add, I guess it's interesting. I just looked at that as a completely different way, that point of 85%, because the impact, obviously, if the child isn't in school, they're not learning. And so when we talk about, do people know about what your SIP is? I guess, obviously, the parents are part of that three-legged stool, and if they're not aware that if their child isn't there, they're not learning, that's a little unsettling to me, but also another emphasis. This is a responsibility in the community, the parents and the family as well. Your child needs to be there to learn. You can't make the improvements that you've laid out for us if they don't have their person.
It kind of speaks to some of those lagging indicators. So that indicator does lead to the better instruction or better learning that we're looking for, because if they're not in school, you're in school. It's more than likely they're not under that degree.
Yeah, it's a kind of a precondition.
Right, which most of us assume that
Yeah.
those school districts that they're going to be there, but if you have to put that in there, then
You have to check and make certain. Parents sometimes incentivize the students and families to even be there, and then engagement has to happen in the classrooms.
thank you.
How did you arrive at the 85% in your?
So the state generally has a 90% threshold, And that is our goal for the end of the year and the idea. And a lot of our schools are over the 85%, but several of them. But the idea is that leading to the end of the year goal, that we have some progress toward that goal.
I also compliment you on creating a partnership with the city court to get these children in, because that's something I've been saying for 2 decades. And Gary schools have never done it, help parents accountable. When other school districts have done that. So I think that may get you where you want to go.
Do you have the ability, this is an aside, but do you have the ability to disaggregate your data, to look at your results with kids who have been in school for some minimum threshold of time and those who haven't? To be able to see what, kind of, to separate out the negative results that come from the students who aren't there? Just curious.
Yes.
As to what we're actually doing in school rather than the noise that happens from the kids who.
So that kind of speaks to our MTSS program, so multi-tier systems of support. So students who are having difficulty with attendance, but also behavioral and academic, a lot of times it's not just in one area, they're interrelated. And so the people in the building who have taken on responsibility for those individuals, we have a special ed person on the team. You have your attendance person, you'll have some coaches on that team, that they can look at students who are telling us, there's some issues. And maybe the glaring issue might be behavioral, but when you really look at the issue, the child at all the different data points, they're not attending, or perhaps they're not learning in the classroom. Whatever is being presented to them is not the way they learn. So maybe we look at some different ways to instruct them, or, maybe they need a little wiggly seat or whatever it is that we need to do to allow the student to have the results that we know that they can. So yes, we can disaggregate that data and then look at different ways.
You can look at achievements, but, and also add the attendance rate for the student and see. Yep. Interesting.
Okay.
But how do you change, I have to say, it's a culture if it's, the attendance is that low, that going to school is an option?
Well,
I did not know, I don't know, how do you, because it has to be a cultural issue, I don't want to say culture, but something in the community must say that this is okay not to go.
Yeah, so
How do you change that?
I think it's one of our areas to focus on so that we don't become where they're like, why are the kids not there? Well, they're not here. So that's one of the main reasons. Our attendance rate overall is not, horrible necessarily, not across the district anyway. And then one of the things that we do is just improve the environment. That's one of the things. Improve the conversations that we have with the families and have more engaging environments for our students. That kind of gets them there. And then we are working on incentives for students as well. Just little,
Is there a segregation between the upper grades and the lower grades as far as attendance goes?
Sometimes it is. The lower grades are a little bit easier because of course they're not responsible for getting themselves there. Not that the higher grades are, but a lot of times in middle high school, parents kind of let the kids kind of go over a little bit. Yeah, so there is a difference.
And holding them accountable through courts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
It's unfortunate. I think it's a path, but, okay.
There is research on how you do that, and it's easier done at the elementary level than at the secondary level. Because if you upgrade the incentives, we saw it, and I was a principal for 20 years. I saw at the earlier part of my career that we could give our certificates at the end of the year and allow them to bid on. It was just a sheet of paper to them. I still have my certificates. I'm 99 years old. And I still have my certificate. I can tell you exactly what the royal bed in my guest bedroom. So my guest, I want to do my possessions, they'll see my awards. But the thing is that my generation valued it. We had to build trophies into the process of quarter, and then we got gifts, major things that kids wanted in the sports area for the boys that the stores donated to us. Our area was healthy then, but not so healthy with our business community now. And we had higher level things that changed the whole scenario as far as the elementary kids were concerned. But we also had other things in it, because they, if they're not intrinsically so motivated, and they're extrinsically motivated, sometimes they can wait till these periods where they get the rewards. And so we had built in ice cream socials during the year. We had things built in to a point where parents said, what are you doing at that school that my child's sick and won't come to school? That's where you gotta get to.
Yes, I agree. We do have quarterly incentives built into the year this year. And I think not the ending necessarily of COVID, but the fact that we can gather a little bit better now helps us be able to do some of those things.
And the expectations we're creating and just the joy and engagement in the schools. I was in elementary school yesterday with, a makerspace and engaging ways that
And a more positive environment where students feel welcomed into the school.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think too, if a student starts seeing success within themselves, they're gonna want to go to school. That's the important thing, but you're being very careful about making sure that they're making progress. When they see that progress themselves, that's the incentive to go to school the next day. Very, very critical.
Some of that ties to, or picking up on some of your comments, but some of that ties to furniture. And making an environment that reflects the place you'd want to be and looks like a place where you're wanting to be.
Yeah, we're student centered.
Yes, we're aiming for that joy and rigor. We want both those things to be true. For that reason, we're investing in the exterior and the interior of the buildings. Exactly.
Right. It makes a difference, it really does.
I think the addition of the clubs as well, science, robotics, and all those things that kids want to stay after school for, too, helps get them to school first.
We found that if we got a child that had some connection to a teacher, and the teacher or somebody in the field, sometimes custodians, talk to the child to find out why he didn't want to come to school. We got the group around. We were able to solve some of our problems because we had one child who remember specifically. The reason he come, he wasn't coming because the boys were jiving on him, laughing at him on his gym shoes. So that's why he wanted to know. Those are easy fix. You have others where they're bored to death. That's not an easy fix. That takes more time to deal with, but we work on it. You've got to know the root of the problem, not look at the symptom. You got to know the root of the problem, solve the problem. And it comes from connecting with those kids. They will, if you connect with them, they'll tell you why they're not coming. But it's got to be the right person, man. If you don't, there's no trust factor. They're not going to tell you.
I just wanted to make a comment. I just read in the paper yesterday or today that I think it was Lilly is giving out millions of dollars for coaching and make sure you're tapped into that. And
It's very important, yeah.
And I think we use these terms quite a bit, so we'll be coming back to those as we start talking about where our progress indicators are specifically in those areas. So I'm going to turn it back to Ms. Black.
Okay. So some of our updates around those 4 areas, which is what we'll do when we come back month to month. So around curriculum and instruction, some of the key actions that have been initiated already is that our instructional calendars have been finalized, they're standards-based for all of our grade levels and content areas. Our teachers have been trained on the maps. Principals are conducting daily walkthroughs. We specify at least 3 per day that are done in our classrooms per administrator, at least 3, but they're getting into more classes than that. We have evaluated the iLearn data and are grouping kids based on that for part of those groups, and then initiated our after-school program. These things are occurring during our Q1 as we look at our plan. So these are things that are pulled from.
Before you do this, when we talk about the daily classroom walk, the education, they know what they're focusing on, and we say is that it's being implemented in reality. But do they know what particular they are looking for?
Yes, they were also trained. So one of our key focus areas is making certain that the curriculum is actually taught with fidelity, which is what our focus is. So they were a part of those trainings, so they know what to look for, small group instruction and to what degree. They are looking for key objectives that are posted and students know what it is that they're learning too. So our walkthrough has several areas that they are looking for, and everybody knows what the administrators know, but the teachers know as well. This is not, trying to get you, we want this to occur.
And we'll make sure.
Yeah.
And I walk through, and I see, we should be seeing very similar things, but we shouldn't be rating them differently. One of your greater reliability.
And then under the assessment strategy, we are beginning our iReady diagnostics. So our beginning of the year starts next week on the 29th as the window opens. And it closes I think it's a 2 or 3 week window. I think it's a 3 week window. So we'll have that data from the assessments then. And then Smart Start assessments are part of our curriculum pieces. And they just kind of look at where our kindergartners, first graders come in, along with they also take iReady as well. But this kind of lets you know where the kids are and whether or not you need to put them a little bit differently.
May I ask a question? Already, it's not something you have access to all year long, because it's the windows are open.
So the assessment pieces, so iReady has an instructional piece, which we also have too. And then an assessment piece as well.
And right now, you would administer iReady 3 times, right?
Yes,
One
it
at the
is.
beginning of the first semester, one at the beginning of the second semester.
Yes, beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. But throughout, like Dr. Smith was saying, they also create pathways for the students based on that data. So those pathways help the kids work exactly where their holes are, and they get on those computers and work often throughout the day and throughout the week. Along with some offline activities too, with small group instruction and those things. Data walls are a focus for us this year, so that each classroom and each school, the students know their data, the teachers know their data, and they know what their goals are. And iReady actually gives them a set of goals based on their score. So that will be coming this quarter. And then IDOE released that growth impact report, which our staffs have been looking at to solidify just exactly where those children's holes are and how to improve them. So you use different data points, not just iReady, but what the iLearn says, what iReady says, all of those different data points to create the pathway for our kids, for our students. And then under collaborative structures, teachers are holding PLCs, or professional learning community, weekly. Initially, those are held with the administrator, just guiding the process, and eventually teachers will be holding those within themselves, possibly with the instructional coaches as well. And then teachers and staff receive professional development in the following areas: project-based learning, small group instruction. Pearson and Sabas are our key curriculum for math. And then special ed best practices were also held. And then Mind Plan Ascend data reports. Mind Plan Ascend is another intervention piece that we utilize K-8. And it looks at both math and ELA.
Does the state still give you a profile sheet around the terminology report that shows the weaknesses for every child? Do you still get those?
Those reports look a lot different now with iLearn and post-COVID. So we kind of have to create them ourselves. They used to give you a little breakdown. I know that you're talking about like where they were, what their cut score was, how far away from the cut score they were. That was generally with whoever the vendor was for iStep. But with iLearn, you don't get, now you do get data about like let's say the writing piece, how far away they were from individual writing scores of a 4.
The reason why I say that, by grade, at my school, what we did was identify students in the class that had common weaknesses. And so when you got to that skill, the teacher knew that they had to call on those students because those students were weak. Do you have any means of doing that?
Yes, we do, but it looks a lot different from what the OI stuff used to be, but they still can gather that data. And then I read yes. And iReady actually does what they call a plot report. And so it'll tell you exactly, you have so many students in this quadrant of their learning and how to group them
It
together.
identifies them by name?
Yes, it does, for the student, for the teacher it does.
And are those kids with those common weaknesses pulled out of the small groups?
During our small group instruction, they work together, yes, on those strands or standards and things.
Depending on what's going on, it also could be a teacher capacity building issue. It could be a skill that
Yes.
teacher may not.
Which is why we're focusing on the small group instruction, with the lens of the teacher, so that they understand how to do that, how to respond to the data, what to do when you pull the kids back, how you instruct them in the small groups and the larger groups, absolutely. Okay, and then data systems and structures. So, under this, we've already, I think we talked about it here before, we've implemented the Gary Way, which just kind of introduces the expectations for everyone, and it has various, areas of focus. And then PBIS is a big push for us, which is positive behavioral interventions with support. It helps us identify the type of culture and climate that we want in the building that is positive, that leads to the engagement and has students wanting to be at school, and adults too. Nobody wants to be in an environment that is hostile all day long. And then all schools that have communicated their goals for academics also, plus attendance and school discipline. And we have school-based attendance teams that have been created. And those will be looked at monthly, and the attendance, the discipline, all of that will be checked. And then finally, IRE3 results came out in July, because third grade students get an additional window to retake the test during the summer, which our students did. And so what you have there is our final data for IRE3. So each year, in addition to I Learn, our students in third grade take IRE3. And this year, and again, this coming school year, the DOE decided to allow second graders to also take the test. So we also have some second graders in that testing pool as well. IRE3 assessment is not used as a state accountability measure, but it does provide valuable information about early literacy skills. So of course, we utilize that data in that way. IRE3 scores confirm our plans to prioritize small group reading instruction during our 90-minute reading block. And the data is at the bottom. So 2020, there was no data reported. 2021, 36.9% of our students passed IRE3. And this year, 42.4% of our students passed IRE3. So there are increases occurring, nowhere near the percentages that we, again, are satisfied with, which is why we're focusing on early literacy, small group instruction, those things. So that once our students get to third grade, they're able to read and comprehend and be proficient as a
When you think about your K-3 teachers and their ability to teach reading and where they're at, there's a lot of discussion and research about the right ways to teach reading, the right approach, whole language or phonics or blended. How do you feel your teachers are equipped in that area? And what are you doing to bolster that?
Our reading curriculum that we utilize, the source that we use is more balanced literacy right now, and most companies are pushing balanced literacy. When I taught first grade, I taught a whole reading kind of concept. Both can be beneficial. So students need phonics. Students need phonemic awareness. Students need all of those foundational skills. And so balanced literacy does a good job of pulling all of that together. And I think that our teachers have the tools they need, but again, we have coaches that support any teachers who need support around teaching kids to read, because it is more than just putting a book in front of a student. You do need to know all of the nuances of what happens in a child's brain when you are teaching them to read, and be able to attend to those miscues. And it can be very not difficult, but scientific, for lack of a better word. The teachers do not read in kindergarten, first and second grade.
New research on the science of reading, or the kind of bringing back the pretty clear, the need for high quality phonics for instruction on that front. So I think that undergirds.
Right.
Do you have any plans to empower parents to be able to assist you in the first lessons? I mean, workshops with them, so they are able to, what things they need to do to assist in the reading process and deal with math, the games they play on highways, all the kind of stuff, all the research is out there. Are you doing anything?
Yeah, so our space liaisons work together with our instructional coaches, so we have at least one instructional coach in every building. And because we, of course, get title dollars, it is a mandate, but we do it regardless, that monthly meetings with parents occur around those.
But are they instructional focused? I mean,
Yes.
I know they have meetings for information and so forth.
No, they have to be focused on ELA and that's what they're focused on. So we may have, like they call them like make and takes. So the families may sit together, they may make some different games that are based on math or science, math or ELA that they can then do at home with their family, with their kids.
Well, that's fine. Share factors, but because we do have a lot of grandparents that are coming in to do grandparents read with their students, and they're coming in working side by side with our teachers and reading in the classrooms that are learning alongside so they can take it back home.
Are teachers expected to be sending instructions home to parents on what the expectations are for those K-3 students around reading?
There's a newsletter that goes out often, both from the principal and the teachers. We ask them to send out. So this week we're working on whatever letter sound and whatever standard, and it has explanations as to what those look like and how they can support their kids.
I think Mr. Bennett.
No, fine, thank you. I believe it was on slide number 5 under academic plan, goals and approach. Your opportunities and strategies through the elementary, middle school, and high school. You talked about reducing the percentage of students in below proficiency. You talked about increasing access. Have you attached any percentages, actual numbers to those opportunities or to those strategies? In other words, I know the goal is 100%, right? But we're not going to get there overnight. But how do you know you're going to be successful? What percentage reduction are you looking for in those, or have you had that discussion?
All right, so what we did was we looked at the data from ILER last year to see what number of students were at that level and which number from the year before made that. And so we're looking at what would be a manageable, but also ambitious goal to move those students, and also what actual raw number that would look like. And I think we landed somewhere around like a 20%, or perhaps in that group, because we're talking about moving those students from below proficiency to approaching. And so that, yeah, we do have it.
On that gap closing, that kind of over that 2 years, really into that 20 or 30% to try to get those kids in distracting distance.
Is that going to be in the detail that?
Yeah, and I circled that too. We think of it. And when you said specific goals, then you would have a percentage in there. And if they able to achieve 20%, I tell my students to be realistic with the number, because 20% is jump.
Well, we looked at over 2 years.
Yeah. But if you stay in 2 years, or 1 year, it'll be done. It's not too much for 2 years. It's not too much for 2 years, but if you get 20% in a year, what people will laugh.
You got to stretch. It's got to be realistic.
Yeah. But it can be done.
Yeah.
Thank you. I remember when the school I inherited, Gary was healthy then. We had 28 elementary schools. And Williams School was ranked 17th in reading and 23rd in math. Took 7 years, but when I left there, 7 years later, we were ranked 7th both areas. It doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. It took 7 years to get up there where we wanted to be.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that information. All right, with that, we'll move back to the school improvement fund. Ms. Wolverton, you're on deck.
Afternoon. So included in your packet this month are our July claims for the 1065 School Improvement Fund. This is just wrapping up our summer projects. You'll notice mostly every school this summer got touched painting somehow, whether it's an entryway or cafeteria, hallways, things like that. So all of our principals and students, I think, to your point, as they started school, really are noticing that painting made a huge difference, as well as our turf too. So this month from July, your claims total is $1,183,942.89 for your approval.
Are there questions for Ms. Wolverton regarding 165 presentation? We would ask, as I'm looking at the document we received, maybe you have this information, a couple of things that would be helpful to maybe include in the future. Some sort of variance that would show us sort of, to get a sense of, are we on track with what we have left to do? So we show what we have, what we think we'll have available, what we spent today, if we had a sense of where we were to know what to expect there. And then small point about just being able to break out the claims for the particular month that we're approving, I think will be helpful. So I know we've done it in the past. Other questions for Ms. Wolverton? All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would accept the School Improvement Fund 1065 claims as presented.
For a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion?
Is this dealing with these, I was a little bit confused, that's why I didn't say anything. Is that dealing with?
The plan itself?
I mean, this here, okay. Can I ask some questions? I had some, I wasn't listening really where. When we look at the Hall of Fame room and trophy case, where is that to be located and what items are going in there? Where is that for all schools or just for Westside?
So I believe that's just for Westside. That is to store all of our memorabilia that we have from other schools.
Also, you do have no. Because I was concerned when you were closing some of the high school. Every time we close school before, everything disappears.
So the original plan is down the surge area to have a display case down that hallway. So all the students from there in the surge during breaking periods, passing classes, things like that, they can see all the.
And my next question is, who's doing all this paper and equipment work?
So Kent Stuff is the name of the vendor.
From Gary? Or is it the kids done?
I know, yeah, they do have a location in Gary.
Okay, so are you dealing with an outside person? I mean, a company, or are you dealing with Gary company? Because that's why I raised the question before.
So Kent Stuff, I do believe, has a location in Gary, but they
They
have other locations as well. Yes.
Okay, so you didn't contract with a local vendor?
So Kent Stuff, we purchased through the state's cooperative purchasing structure. Because a lot, the state has that model in place so that schools can combine their purchasing power, because all schools across the state eventually are going to need a new playground. And so basically the state as a whole puts forth bids and we all benefit, just like buying buses, buying computers and so on. So Kid Stuff is one of the vendors in that cooperative purchasing, and it gives us very advantageous. We have them already in place. Like if you go by Beverage and look at their new playground the last couple of years, that's the vendor in Beverages as well.
So you don't know if the local vendor gets any benefits from this money that's circulating out here?
So Kid Stuff was purchased with a certified vendor. And just as a reminder for the board, federal dollars are prohibited from giving local preference. Obviously, we're going to try to make them aware. We're going to put in the newspaper. Local vendors have the ability to bid on things, but we cannot, with federal funding, cannot have a.
Well, I'm not talking about preference. I mean, were they given the opportunity to even bid on it? That's what it is.
Yeah, so anytime we do either through a co-op and the co-op is doing it, or if we do it directly, if it's over 150,000, that public posting of the RFP is available. So the vendors through the co-ops that we work with have the ability, you're allowed to use RFPs for a certain period of time, have the ability to bid and get their names on those lists.
We send it to the Gary Chamber as well.
Okay, well, the community is continually concerned about all the volume of dollars that they're spending, and it doesn't, seems to be keeping nobody here.
Yes, I'm sure. We're using lots of dairy vendors.
I would like to see the vendors list.
Yeah, I mean, they're always, every single contract that we receive DUAB's approval, which as you know, is over $30,000. That's communicated with Mr. Miller or the full board. If it's over that threshold, we always look at Gary vendors. And often we do seek out, you know, we've used Reed Riley, you know.
We got a Gary vendor calling today.
Yeah, I heard that.
And Ms. Ward, I think you have prepared that we could present that next time. I think.
Yep, I can present that as well. I know just off the top of my head, I think one of those charts did show at least 30% was going to Gary vendors, specifically ones that did not have it restricted.
Right.
That's it. Okay. We have a motion on the table. All those in, the motion is to approve the claims docket. The motion and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. It is adopted. Thank you. Up next, we have consideration of the paraprofessional contract. Dr. McNulty?
Yes.
Back up again?
Yes. So yeah, your professional contract.
That has been.
Was something we've been working on for a while. The para contract had not been renegotiated since 1989. And so we.
Can I just, how is that possible?
Right, I don't know. I don't know. So, just being honest.
How often are they typically renegotiated in school?
It's similar to a teacher's contract, so you can either do it annually, or you can negotiate a 2 or 3 year contract. We were successful and able to negotiate a 2-year contract this year, which I was very happy about. We did have a long negotiation process, and we feel like it ended well for both parties. We were able to increase the para rate so that we are able to recruit and retain paras as we move forward in this process. We were able to give incentives for our paras if they pass the para certification test put forth by the state. And trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, we were able to clean up a lot of the language that was in the para contract, again, that was very outdated.
Questions on this contract for Dr. McNulty?
Do you have to compare the paras that are in the training for teaching?
We do.
You do?
Yes. Yeah. We have currently about 77 paras.
What's the total cost of the contract overall?
I don't know, but I can get that to you. Yeah.
So this is.
But we did raise the rate to $16 an hour.
It's part of your overall compensation.
Yes.
Line item.
Correct.
Can I ask what the rate was before?
Yeah, we were, last year, they were on a tier, now we've been lower than that. So we were on a tier, some were $8, some were $10, and some were $12, depending on your years of experience. So last year.
Right, you guys didn't even know if you want that right now.
We agreed, but we not, no one had, so anyways, we were able to raise them last year, and then now we got the whole contract cleaned up and up to $16. And then again, they get a stipend if they pass that test, which we really are encouraging them to do.
Other questions?
What is the incentive if they pass?
And they get a $500 stipend. Mm-hmm. The test that
Do we have any training sessions?
we have training sessions up there every when.
For the parent?
For the parent certification.
So motion.
Just moving the contract, an amount, right?
Just approving this.
Okay, I'm going to approve the professionals contract in Gary Community Schools.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. It is adopted.
Thank you.
So we can come up
We'll put a new date on that contract.
Let's hope it's not another 23 years. Up next, we have an update from Mr. Miller regarding two contracts that he has approved in the interim since our last meeting. Mr. Miller?
So the first contract was with Inventum for instructional materials, so kind of a last level. This is an existing vendor, it's just a renewal, what we've done, same as last year. It's funded through Title I for a total of $97,700. And then the second contract was Tri Electronics for 120 new Motorola digital radios for security communication between buildings. This was funded through ESSER 3. That was a part of ESSER 20 that you had approved revision of last month. There were actually 3 bidders, saw 2 responded. So Tri Electronics was the low bid, $127,255 in dollars.
Why is the effort to improve the radio station? What is the purpose of that radio station?
So it's not it's separate from the radio station.
Separate from.
Yeah, so when you're talking about our radio station that we broadcast, this is, as an administrator, you would have a radio, we have a student injured on the playground. We're talking about the handheld. Yeah. Handheld radio.
It's digital radio, so the DRF. Yeah, Senator Brown.
Thank you. Just a quick question. This is more maybe a question you can answer later, but it just came this morning from a conference on data privacy. I had a bill that I'll be introducing in there. Was a question / concern as we implement take-home materials, electronics and these software programs. If you can share with me, and you're just a test case, I could have asked any school, not here in the spot, but how the students' data is secure by your third-party vendors.
Yeah.
If I'm sure there's some kind of boilerplate they have.
Yeah, so this, we're purchasing for this specifically, we're purchasing the equipment and then we are running it on our systems. But if you're talking about general technology, we do have a system called GoGuardian that we use that basically, if a laptop was lost, we can shut it down. It also serves as our security and privacy filters so that students don't get on inappropriate things, whether they're at school or at home. And then obviously we've got, 2-factor security on things like where, staff their emails are secure, the student information system is secure so that others that maybe get access to a username and password aren't necessarily able to get into it if they don't also have that person's cell phone that's then unlocked. So yeah, we do have several mechanisms in place to make sure, because that is a concern. And honestly, it's something that our insurance companies have required us to do as well, because it's a big issue financially if our systems were to become hacked.
So that's one piece, and that is interesting, but also the next level is, so I take home a student, I take home my device you've given me, you kept me from going to sites that I'm not supposed to go to, but on the other hand, is that third-party software company that you contracted with, or whatever it is, are they somehow able to disaggregate my data, and are they then reselling it? That's the next level, right?
Okay. Yeah, so if you're talking about personal identifiable information that's protected by federal law, that would be a very large issue if they were collecting, personal information. Now, if you're talking about what websites were visited, cookies, just like, Facebook tracks what we do, that's, I would have to get back to you on that. But the software specifically is protecting, students' safety and security, but also things that are FERPA protected so that individual student information is not shared with the broader community or hackers.
Good, but it's also important to your point that a virus or somehow a kid inadvertently opens up your entire system to a hack and then shuts down the.
Yeah, and that's happened to,
Oh, yeah.
schools and government systems, and so it takes a lot of time and money to clean it up.
Right.
So obviously we want to be, so anytime we've purchased things like devices, you've always seen related costs, warranties if they get broken, but also the safety and security software, because honestly, it's in this day and age, it's an absolute.
Right. All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
That's as much as I.
Chairman, one quick, yeah, Mr. Bateson, on these handhelds, they more than just two channel, or are they just two channel?
I would have to get back to you on that. I know, anyway.
So will it be able, the ability to talk with Gary Police or Gary
Yeah.
Fire?
Yeah, so if you see in the notes, it has in parentheses wave alert system. You know, we have some other facets that are part of our general security plan that, you know, allows panic to be identified by any teacher. And then we already have that system in place where our local emergency personnel are connected. So that's really why we did this, is because we had some radios. None of them really talk to each other, and internally or externally. So, and then obviously updating the number as well. But yeah, that.
So each building will have a repeater in it so that there will be penetration inside the building for coverage and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And they
why?
can also talk to the sheriff's department.
Okay, sure. And why 120?
So you're talking, we've got 10 buildings. We've got, you know, when you're talking about, you know, we've got at least 3 administrators in each building.
So Dr. McNulty may have one.
Right. Yeah, so you've got
Okay.
not just administrators, but so if I'm at recess with 4th grade,
Sure.
we want one of the teachers in every single grade level to have one when they go out to recess. Because typically an administrator is not out at recess, so somebody needs a radio out there, and we stagger recess time. So you're talking about, obviously not every teacher, because we have roughly 300 teachers, but really one per grade level, admin, a counselor, you know, if there's a, you know, a mental health crisis of some kind. So that's really speaking to the number.
Okay.
Coaches.
Thank you.
Is there times where they're restricted from going onto I remember when I was a practicing principal that there were certain channels that we can go on and channels that were available to certain people that we, as a teacher, I mean, as a principal, we weren't able to go on the ones for security. We could call security, but we could not go on that channel. Will at least be restricted over there. They have full range of all the channels.
So I think these are probably a little bit newer technology than what you're describing, so that there is good communication, because like the principal is the leader of that building, so they need to be able to communicate with security in that building. And then our central office security director needs to be able to quickly communicate with not just security, but principals in those buildings. So,
But my
there are
question
new
is, would they be interfering with the sheriff's office?
Oh, no.
There's certain.
So they have to
No.
turn to the channel.
Certain channel, yeah.
But they won't be restricted in turning to this channel.
Right, so we're not going to be on the police radio locally, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
There may be a need for it.
Yeah, I know you need for you to go to that channel.
Yeah, right.
Well, we don't want 120 people on
But
there,
no,
right?
yeah.
Like, you know, if that's where our security director does have the ability, and we have the technology, this being one facet of that, to quickly and effectively communicate with the fire department, health department.
Nathan, will these have the ability to, when they will happen, fall into the wrong hands, stop it,
Right.
shut them off?
Yes,
Because that's going to happen.
I know. It is, yeah, and that's sort of to Senator Brown's point.
Ferris Bueller moment.
Yes. Yeah.
It's reality.
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, no, understood.
All right, well, next up, we have consideration of another contract. This is a design of security vestibules with GMB architecture. Anything?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Adams. Yeah, so before you today is a contract and consideration for $541,000. The recommended bidder is GMB Architecture. This is for the plans alone for some updates to our entrances across all of the 10 buildings in the district.
Questions regarding?
So they're charging about 50,000 per plan?
So the specific quotes are in the latter part of the contract. On average, because we have 10 buildings, yes.
Older schools are more expensive. It's more figure out there.
Do we have funding identified? So obviously these, we don't want these plans just to be a plan. We expect this to turn into some sort of capital project.
We do.
Are there funds identified for that? And if so, where are those allocated?
Yeah, so very good question. As you may know, we had this activity budgeted in ESSER 3, but the plans alone have, come in at a rate that we are going to have to pull in some other dollars. Essentially, Mr. Miller and I have spoken about this, a few times, that if today I said where and had to pick where, I would say, well, we would reduce the flooring that we have budgeted in ESSER 3. So that would be the absolute, that we're not going to come and ask for you to obligate, all of the flooring funding until we have this addressed first. I think there is possibly some wiggle room in 1065, but as you all know, we do our best to plan these budgets, and then the contracts come in, and lately they've been higher than we have projected, because multiple factors. So we absolutely see this as a priority, and so at a minimum, we're going to reduce some other activities that would be considered lesser of importance, so that because we do want to address this every building and not just piecemeal it and have one or two and then wait till the plans are outdated and then we have to do it again.
Other questions regarding this contract? All right, can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the contract with GMB Protection to design security and vestibules for the all school buildings in the Gary Community School Corporation. $541,000.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Is there any new business to come before the board today that doesn't include our scheduled business? All right.
I just wanted to bring up a point that was discussed on the radio today, has come up multiple times, is holding meetings and hearing. I know before COVID, made some commitments to do that. COVID shot through that plan, and we had that one hearing there. But that is a concern of the community.
Thank you. All right, with that, we are adjourned.